that there is more and more fire and smoke enveloping the very top of the building. And as fire crews are descending on this area, it does not appear that there's any kind of an effort up there yet. Now remember, oh my God.
In the morning hours of September 11th, 2001, the United States became victim to the deadly terrorist attacks on the World Trade Center. Without knowing the cause or the reason for the attacks, hundreds of firefighters, police officers, and first responders descended on the scene to evacuate any potential survivors from the attacks. Within the towers themselves, however, chaos from the fires and destruction made escape seem hopeless for those trapped on the upper floors. Despite what seemed like certain death for those stranded, a man with a red bandana tied around his face ushered survivors and carried injured people to the tower stairwell. Guiding them down flights of stairs, he went back up into the fires looking for more survivors to guide to safety and joined the FDNY firefighters in their search and rescue efforts. At 9:59 a.m., the South Tower collapsed, taking this masked man and his fellow firefighters down to their deaths. The man in the red bandana would later be identified as Wells Crowther, an equities trader that had aspirations of becoming a full-time firefighter. After hearing about the story in the New York Times from survivor Judy Wine, Crowther's sister Allison knew that the rescuer could only be her brother with his trademark red bandana, a gift given to him from his father when he was a child. According to all accounts, Crowther is credited with saving 18 lives during the World Trade Center attacks. His body was found intact amongst the firefighters he was working beside with red bandana on his person. Despite having every opportunity to save himself and escape, Crowther kept returning to the scene simply based on the hope of finding someone to rescue. Crowther's story is one of superhuman expectations, not just for the physical feats of rescuing people in a burning building, but for having to disregard for his own safety to save the lives of those around him. His selfless acts directly touched the lives of those 18 people he rescued, their families, and those inspired by his story to what is good and right in the face of adversity. It may be cheesy and cliche, but his real-life heroics are examples usually reserved for movies and comic books. And I couldn't help but recall his story while reading Superman for all seasons. Although not the first comic book to describe Superman's origin, it is the one that best humanizes this invincible alien from the planet Krypton. Written and illustrated by comic book legends Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale, they tell the story of Superman as a young man leaving Smallville for the first time as his burgeoning powers call for him to achieve a higher purpose. The story is told from the perspective of those through key points in his life, first from his father, then Lois Lane, followed by Lex Luthor, and closing with Lana Lang. It's one of the few comic books that are able to expertly convey the inner struggles and challenges facing its hero without a single internal monologue bubble dedicated to them. While there are other origin stories to read such as the Man of Steel line from the 1980s or Superman Birthright, I found Superman for All Seasons to be the best place to start a Superman journey due to its simple yet impactful story and for focusing on Clark's earthly desire to be a hero instead of a purpose to be achieved with his Kryptonian heritage. Book 1, Spring. Opening with Superman's greatest catchphrases, we dive into the origins of Clark Kent told from the viewpoint of his father, Jonathan. As he works on his tractor, he recalls the day that a rocket ship fell from the sky and in it finding a baby boy, completely unscathed. As crazy as a baby and a rocket is, he calls it crazier to even take in the baby they found there, thanks to the insistence of Martha Kent. Clark approaches John to help him and is easily able to lift a boulder with one hand, something John's tractor couldn't even begin to budge. Back inside for dinner, John lets on that it's Clark's last year in high school as they host the Langs for a nice roast. As Lana's Aunt Ruth is ready to leave, Lana says to Clark that he was quiet during dinner and suspects that something is wrong. Back on the porch, Martha senses some strife between John and Clark as John reflects on the changes that Clark is experiencing. He is worried that his powers are progressing too quickly. Martha quickly dismisses his worries, confident that they raised their son the right way. Zooming in on a raised window, Clark listens on to everything that they are saying. Clark, Lana, and Pete Ross are in downtown Smallville as they enter the familiar scene in the general store. John recounts all of the usual proprietors and gives a feel to the small town vibes. Pete talks about having $1 million and thinks about what it's like to be Lex Luthor with all of that money. Clark runs out of the store forgetting that he has an appointment for a haircut. When he sits down in the barber chair, he can hear Pete and Lana through the store wall talking about him. As the barber takes a snip of Clark's hair, the scissors break across the follicles. Clark runs out embarrassed as the barber and the local cop look on in bewilderment. Clark runs across the train tracks on his way home, where Martha sees him standing by himself in the field. John goes out to talk to him, and we see the sun setting as they're still out there. John only wants Clark to be a normal boy, but knows his abilities are something special. In spite of those uncertainties, John promises no matter what that he and Martha will love him. John and Martha are seen trying to wrangle up the farm from an approaching tornado. Clark is out in the field when the cyclone touches down and quickly makes its way towards him. The tornado lifts Clark, and after a brief moment of fear, controls himself and rescues the gas station worker before the tornado rips the small shops to shreds. He protects him until the tornado has passed, and they both look on the destruction of Smallville. Clark rushes home to find his parents safely in the cellar as they all embrace in relief of one another. As Clark helps to repair the farm, he can't help but wonder, with his powers, that he could have done more for the town. And those words are what give John and Martha faith in Clark. Clark goes to visit Pastor Lindquist about his uncertainties about the future. He wants to know what a man could do and should do to prevent the destruction he just saw. Pastor Lindquist says we all do what we can within our own power, but there's nothing we can do when God sets a plan. Clark asks what could be done if someone could change God's plan. Clark and the gang graduate from high school, and the Kents prepare for Clark's departure. Clark and Lana are alone on a hill overlooking the Kent house when Clark takes Lana's hands in hers and begins to fly with her. He takes her over the farm, confident in his ability to fly. Clark believes he has these powers to help people, and Lana realizes he must leave Smallville to accomplish that goal. With a kiss, he promises to return to Smallville one day. Dressed in a suit, Martha lets Clark know that he can accomplish anything as he sets off to say farewell to John. As both men stare off into the sunset, they realize it's time to say goodbye. From the small prairie to the big city, Clark has decided to move to Metropolis to make his new life. Working for the Daily Planet, we're introduced to his new boss, Perry White, and colleagues Lois Lane and Jimmy Olsen. Lois has plans with Lex Luthor for the night, as a red and blue whoosh blows past both of them. A child is chasing his cat along a building balcony, and he loses his footing and falls off the edge. The same red and blue streaks by and sets the child back down, revealing Superman in full costume. Lex Luthor watches on as he seethes while drinking a glass of wine. Book 2, Summer. Our new narrator, Lois Lane, reflects on advice given to her by Perry White, advice that once was good before the arrival of Superman. She admits to giving him his name, despite the suggestions from many of her colleagues. Unfortunately, she thinks this is all too good to be true. A man that can do all of these incredible feats, and he decides to be a hero. Lois states that people don't look out for each other. Jaded by stories she has covered, she can't believe that one man would do so much for all of us. Lois and her sister believed in someone like that as girls, the fictional Prince Charming. She admits some men had the features, but no one had it all. Lex Luthor adjourns a meeting for more pressing matters. Superman dives underwater and spots a submarine in the ocean. The sailors brace for impact as something hits the submarine. Lex pulls up to an Air Force base as he's let in without any hassle. He and the other soldiers look on as Superman has the enemy submarine in hand. He shreds the hull open, forcing the enemies to surrender. Luthor accosts Superman for damages he's done until they are interrupted by one of the sailors holding Lois Lane at gunpoint. The sailor pulls back the hammer, but Superman steals the gun before Luthor has any time to begin negotiations. Lois breaks herself free and turns down Lex's offer for a ride back to the planet. She goes with Superman instead, but not before he points out that it was LexCorp missiles and guidance systems on board that submarine. Lois points out to Superman that nobody talks to Lex Luthor the way he does, but Superman isn't too worried about it. Inside the planet, Lois runs into Clark, and he asks how she got aboard that submarine. Bewildered by his discovery, she ironically states that we all have our secrets. Lois continues to dismiss her notions of Prince Charming, since whatever ideal is made up, no man will ever live up to that expectation. Except for Superman. As a reporter or a woman, she can't figure out what a man like him could be doing when not performing altruistic deeds. Turns out, a man is still a boy, and Clark takes some time to go home to see Ma and Pa. Clark admits over dinner that he's feeling lonely in the big city. He goes to visit Lana the next day and finds Pastor Lindquist at the house. Turns out Aunt Ruth passed away, and Lana has left, so he has to take it upon himself to care for the house. Pastor Lindquist lets Clark know that he's famous now, that the general store carries the Daily Planet now just to see his name printed every day. Clark runs into Pete, and they visit the general store where not much has changed. Pete tells Clark he always thought it was him that was going to make it big in the city, and asks if he's ever met Lex Luthor. Clark says yes, and calls him just a normal man, like everyone else. Back on the farm, Clark tells Martha that he hasn't found his place in the city yet, and being away from Smallville so long has made it feel different too. Martha assures him that he'll find his way. Back in Metropolis, Lois and Jimmy are sent to Chemco Labs, which is on fire, and happens to be LexCorp's next acquisition. Almost on cue, the LexCorp guardians of the city arrive to put out the Chemco fire. As Superman arrives, the robots assure him that the situation is handled and everyone is safe. Superman tosses it aside and uses his X-ray vision to see someone still trapped in the facility. He barrels into the building, using his frost breath to blow the flames away, and rescues a young woman found unconscious on the floor. He leaves her with the fire paramedics and flies away to address the fire. Using his cape and spinning quickly, he draws the fire out of the building and into a vortex surrounding himself. Drawing the fire away, Superman scolds the robots for being careless and holds Lex responsible. Lois gets a quote from the woman Superman rescued and makes the Daily Planet front page. Coincidentally or not, Lex visits the rescued woman, a young Miss Vaughn, with a proposition for her to help Superman as we see her obsession with Metropolis's new hero. Book 3, Fall. The opening panels show Lex Luthor getting booked for a crime as Metropolis proudly displays itself as the home of Superman. The evil megalomaniac is the narrator for this issue, and he explains that the city needs to see things from his point of view, referring to them as children in need of guidance. As Lex flies away, Lois and Jimmy collect pieces for their story in which Superman has gotten Lex Luthor arrested. On his way home in his chopper, Lex is stopped in the air by Superman. As Lex gets home, he avoids all calls and reflects on Metropolis betraying him for Superman. After a shower and a shave, Lex dismisses his self-loathing since no one would ever pity a man like Lex Luthor. Lex works all day to diminish his arrest in subtle ways. Calling judges, making donations, he takes the role of a savvy businessman and politician to make sure the whole affair is forgotten. Unfortunately, one man will not forget what has transpired, as it appears Superman has dedicated himself to a 24-hour watch of Lex. He confronts Superman, letting him know that it was him who made this city, that Superman's fame will fade, but Lex Luthor is forever. Later, Lex meets with the scientist and reveals a disturbing experiment being conducted on Jenny Vaughn, the woman Superman rescued in the last issue. Strapped in a chair with her eyes peeled open, she's viewing constant video of Superman's rescues with a very cheesy narration reel on repeat. Meanwhile, at the Daily Planet, Clark leaves a letter written to his parents out on his desk as Lois Lane stops by to snoop around. Lois gets caught by Clark and wonders who the LL person is he's referring to, presumably her. Lois plays it off as a mistake, but we can see the annoyance in Clark's eyes. As they are talking, Lois begins to cough and passes out into Clark's arms. Lex looks on from his tower as the rest of the Daily Planet becomes incapacitated. Clark tries to wake Lois and is bewildered at what he is seeing. Undoubtedly the work of Lex, Clark leaps into the elevator shaft of the Daily Planet and rushes outside to see all of Metropolis knocked out. Lex revels in what could be going on through Superman's mind, since there is no one to punch, no fires to put out, no disaster to stop. Superman immediately goes to stop a runaway train as Lex's thoughts become his realization. Superman visits Dr. Crosby at Star Labs, and with her help discovers this affliction must be airborne since she was not affected within her contained lab. They wonder what could be done to help, and both come to the conclusion to ask Luthor, Dr. Crosby with curiosity, and Superman with suspicion. Superman visits Lex and sees him unharmed. Lex explains certain floors are environmentally sealed for protection. Not one to let up on the attack, Lex wonders why Superman is not affected like everyone else. Wondering where exactly Superman's powers come from, Lex accuses him of being a potential carrier of this disease and that mankind is in danger because of him. Superman threatens to rip Lex out of the building to make him succumb to the disease, but he humbles himself and asks for help, knowing that Lex most likely caused this catastrophe. Lex has a solution though. He reveals Jenny Vaughn to Superman and that she has created a chemical mixture that will cure Metropolis. Due to its sensitivity, only she can administer the concoction. Reintroducing herself as Toxin, Superman takes her into the air to deliver the serum. Lex narrates his relationship with his father, how he used to beat him as a child. He never budged and never wavered as this happened. Superman and Toxin cause the rain to fall, delivering the antidote to all of Metropolis. As the citizens awaken, Toxin is overcome with a serious coughing fit. Outside of Lex's building, she dies in Superman's arms after saving the whole city. Lex reveals she must have been overexposed to the toxin, and that Superman has no understanding of the true human condition, being an outsider, a superhuman. In a menacing display, he tells Superman to go back to wherever he came from before he fails them all. Feeling the guilt and impact of Lex's words, Clark indeed returns home, back to his parents in Smallville. Book 4, Winter. The issue opens with the same young boy from issue 1 on his ledge again, making snowballs practicing for Major League Baseball. We are introduced to our narrator for this issue, Lana Lang, explaining how her life with Clark was all laid out for her at one point, until she found out they were nothing alike at all. On that night many years ago, Lana thought Clark was going to propose, only to find out his amazing secret. The child is confronted by a LexCorp robot, insisting he get back inside for his safety. Lex looks on with satisfaction at the absence of Superman and his robots patrolling Metropolis. Lana reflects that when Clark took her up into the sky that day, her world came crashing down instead. Lana wonders what could have been instead, as Lois looks out from the planet, wondering where Superman has been, and coincidentally, where Clark has been in his personal leave. Lana understands that Clark shared his deepest secret with her since he trusted her so much with it. Lois makes the Clark and Superman connection, but dismisses that as the dumbest idea she's ever had. Back in Smallville, Clark and Lana have reunited, going out for a walk in the snow. Lana wonders why he's back, and Clark admits he's there to figure out stuff. They make some snow angels, then head into town to see the old area. Lana explains how she ran away from Smallville after her night with Clark. She said goodbye to everyone in town, except for Pete, in the effort to avoid him from following her. They make their way back into the general store, and Lana asks if Pete ever got that $1 million. Pete tells a proverb about putting away childish things, as the usual car crew invites Clark to join them. Pete gives a smart Alec response, and Lana wonders what has gotten into him. Pete wonders why, after getting out, why would Lana and Clark come back to Smallville, of all places? Lana reflects about how welcoming the Kents are, and thinks they are the reason she and Clark are back home, to feel safe. Lana helps Martha with a roasted turkey as Clark carves and serves the family. Chief Parker knocks on the door and tells the Kent family that the rain is causing the river and reservoir to flood over, and that they're setting up a shelter at the church on the hill. John says if it gets worse, they'll make their way out at daybreak, and asks Clark in a knowing way if they will be alright. The way John asks the question makes Lana realize that Clark is single-handedly taking the burdens of the world on his shoulders. Clark expresses his worries to John, and John lets him know that people get good at what they do over time. You can't expect to be the best all the time, but only to do the best you can all the time. After revealing to Martha and John that Lana knows Clark's secret, Martha tells her that the right woman can often help the right man find the answers he's looking for. Lana admits she doesn't have much time for a Superman, but Martha clearly corrects her with Clark. Despite everything, he's still their Clark. The next morning, the Kents are packing up, and Clark dons a Superman costume to see who needs help the most around Smallville. Lana lets Clark know before they leave that even though he can do all of these amazing things, it's not any less hard to do the things that he wants to, that despite everything, he's still the good man that she grew up with all of these years. The car crew from the general store are getting along in a boat, losing all hope in their situation. They look up and see Superman, reinvigorated by his talk with Lana, and watch speechless as hope races across the sky. Superman gets to work, plugging up flooding areas with timber debris, preventing more flooding with stones and rubble. Lana recalls when the news of Superman was spreading across the world, people wondered why someone with his powers would do what he does, and she would just smile. The Kents and Lana attempt to cross the covered bridge, but the flooding becomes too powerful, causing the bridge to collapse with them on it. John falls out into the flooding as Superman races through the air. Clark takes the car off of the bridge and begins to search for John. He finds him holding onto a log and rescues him before his strength gives out. John is unharmed, and he assures his son he can be put down. Not to be forgotten, Clark goes back for his dog Shelby and saves the entirety of the Kent family. The citizens of Smallville gather around the church as Pastor Lindquist gives a reassuring speech to everyone. That despite the troubles they go through, in times of crisis and strife, each man or woman is defined by how they act and overcome these troubles over time. The next day, the Kents and Lana see Clark off as he soars away from Smallville. Lana understands they won't see each other for a long time, but that he has to do what he can to help the people of the world. To the pleasure of Perry and the ire of Lois, Clark returns with the front page story of Superman saving Smallville. Contributing it to luck, Jimmy snickers behind them as Clark is confidently back to work. Lex looks on the city as our favorite young troublemaker is chasing his cat again. The Lex spot startles him, and he falls off the building's edge. Superman arrives to save him again, and tells the Lex spot to let Luthor know that he's back. Superman and the boy introduce themselves officially to one another, with Superman firmly back in the heart of Metropolis. Although better known for their work with Batman, The Long Halloween, and Dark Victory, Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale have found an incredibly endearing and humanizing way to tell the origin story of Superman that I think trumps all of his other origin stories. The plot and art style are such a homage to the golden age of Superman, focused around saving the people of Metropolis. Particularly, Tim Sale's art shines through in such a new way for me. Only familiar with his work with Batman, it was amazing to see how he's able to take the edge off of the way he draws characters like Batman, Catwoman, and the Joker, and give a heroic, softening, and down-to-earth appearance for Superman and the Kent family. As opposed to drawing Superman with cut edges and sharp features, Sale rounds out many of his features, giving almost him a doughy look when he's Clark Kent, but a large and comforting appearance as Superman. It's one of the best distinctions I've seen in comics of the difference between Clark Kent and Superman, making it believable that the people of Metropolis wouldn't recognize the man from the superhero. The way Clark wears his oversized suits also contributes to his appearance as a large country corn farmer, no different than any other transplant you would meet from the American Midwest. Sale's take on Lois Lane reminded me very much of the style used for Selina Kyle, and shows the similarities for forward and tenacious women. I find the design for Lex Luthor an interesting approach. Not the intimidating character I expected, Lex is visibly balding and carries himself with an older, more casual physique. This goes against most of the depictions of Lex that I prefer, namely his appearance from the Justice League series, and while I might not agree with his physical appearance, his mental aptitude for wanting to destroy Superman is not diminished. His Lex spots are a direct inspiration of what would eventually become his power armor, as he takes a more hands-on approach for evil deeds and destroying Superman. Metropolis is displayed in a brilliant Art Deco style, with its soaring towers and monorail systems. It looks straight out of a World of Tomorrow exhibit that someone from the 1960s would envision. Everything looks tall and grand, bright and vibrant, the perfect setting for the Man of Tomorrow to make his debut to reflect the optimism of the future. Smallville depicts a humble snapshot of Midwest Americana. Tim Sale captures this so perfectly with this image from the spring issue of Martha Kent putting down the turkey on the table, a direct copy of the famous Norman Rockwell painting. In this one frame, he's able to capture the American spirit of the Kent family and let the reader know about the hardworking and humble values that they have lived with and raised Clark with. The most impressive displays are the multitude of double-page full-spread art packed with detail that jumps off of the page. It's been noted that these spreads are what inspired Jeff Loeb's writing style for this graphic novel and solidified DC's decision for producing the project. The narration of this graphic novel takes an amazing approach and tells the story in such a unique way. Instead of getting any internal monologue or thoughts from Superman himself, the story is told through observers from each phase of his life. It opens with the apprehensive and worried John Kent, a father who is worried about the future of his son. Through John, we are able to see into the eyes of a father who has raised a son with incredible abilities. These abilities could be incredibly helpful if used for good, or incredibly destructive if used for evil. John has to battle with years of child raising to convince himself that he has raised Clark in the right way, to what is altruistic and right for those around him. He doubts himself more than his son in this instance until he understands and has faith in Clark after the events with the tornado. He wants his son to be normal, but knows that he is destined for great things and has to have faith that taking that baby into his home will prove to be the greatest thing he has done in his life. It's an incredible allegory for all parents, letting their grown children out into the world. Each parent fighting with themselves about if they have prepared them enough for what's out there, afraid for them to discover the world for what it truly is, and mostly wondering if they have raised a good human being that will be kind and helpful. All people have their flaws, and every parent undoubtedly loves their child, but they each hope that their children will somehow make a difference, no matter how small, for the betterment of those around them. Moving on to our next narrator, we get the view from the cynical and jaded Lois Lane. Lois's perspective shines a relatable light on those of us who have experienced things that are just too good to be true. Lois sees Superman doing all of these amazing feats and helping all of the people of Metropolis, and can't help but wonder what's the catch. Why would anyone voluntarily go out of their way to do this? Is this truly from the goodness of his heart, or are there other factors at work here, other motivations for being a hero? Lois has seen the world for its good side and its bad side, and has experience dealing with people who have ulterior motives, namely Lex Luthor. As someone else who claims to be serving the city, Lois can see through Lex's true motivations and understands that what he does is ultimately self-serving for his company, his wealth, and mostly his ego. Although displaying power in a different way, Lois can't help but wonder if Superman's display of power is for the same goal that Lex also uses his power. The only issue is, those ulterior motives never surface. By all experience and evidence, it becomes clear that Superman truly cares about the well-being of the citizens of Metropolis and doesn't expect anything in return. Lois's perspective is an incredibly relatable experience. How many times have we seen someone promise things will be better under them, or give away things for free, only for us to ask in the back of our minds, what's the catch? Are you making false promises for a grab at power? Are you giving stuff away just to advertise your company and draw in new customers? We are suspicious of genuinely kind acts because genuinely kind acts seem so rare to come across. We have a right to be suspicious. It tempers our expectations. It prevents us from being disappointed when the rug is pulled out from underneath us. But when the rug pull never comes, and the kindness is still as strong as the first day we experienced it, will we ever say thank you? Or will we remain jaded and suspicious until we can say I told you so? Our next narrator is the cunning Lex Luthor. Right from the first narration boxes, we are shown Lex's superiority complex with the way that he refers to Metropolis and its citizens. He believes the masses need to be told what to do, and that they have the minds of children that need a guiding hand from a parent. His issue is so interesting for us to see how much of a genius he is, albeit an evil one, but how he has a twisted and false sense of what humanity is supposed to be. Whether it's jealousy or plain contempt, Lex is convinced that Superman will never truly understand the human condition. He tries to display this with Jenny Vaughn and her death in Superman's arms. His cruel lesson to Superman is that he will never know true sacrifice because of his superpowers. A man who cannot be harmed, and arguably cannot die by conventional human means, will never understand the risk and sacrifice that needs to be taken for the betterment of humankind. Lex believes that he knows this simply because he is a human. However, he doesn't display what it means to be human, and this is his greatest flaw. Lex's assumption is that Superman came down from above and is performing these altruistic acts but has no connection to humanity. How could this being, this supposed alien, understand the human condition and have true empathy for their existence? As the reader, we know that he's wrong, since Clark was raised by humble and loving humans, grew up around children of his own age, and created the same bonds and relationships that any human being would. The difference between Lex's and Superman's perceived acts of altruism lies in their ultimate goals for their acts. Superman truly does this out of the goodness of his heart, to save those who need it, and to improve the living condition for all of humanity. Lex will do the same thing, but for selfish gains, to increase the status and revenue of his company, and ultimately to feed his own ego. Someone who is truly empathetic to the human condition would not look upon the city as his personal possession, and would not look onto its citizens as children following his guiding light. He believes this is what Superman wants as well, and can't bear to share a part of his own ego with someone else. He fails to realize that Superman does not have that ego, as evidenced by him asking Lex for his help to cure the disease in Metropolis. If Superman had Lex's same ego, he would have denied any assistance at all, and Metropolis would likely never have woken up because of it. Until Lex can learn to put his own desires behind him, he will never truly understand what Superman does. Putting so many lives at risk just to prove a point shows how Lex really doesn't care about humanity, and that he will manufacture any crisis within his power in order to come out on top. The final issue introduces the last narrator, the ever-hopeful Lana Lang. I found it interesting that Jeff Loeb took Lana Lang as the primary love interest for Superman in this book instead of Lois Lane. Although it is early in his career and the relationship will have time to develop, excluding Lois from the love triangle creates a new relationship dynamic for Clark that was so new to experience. Aside from the new love interest, I found this issue to have some of the most powerful and moving moments of the entire story arc. Lana's narration gives the reader a distant view of Superman and a better look at Clark Kent. She recalls how scared she was when he revealed her secret to her, and how she thought she couldn't fit into Clark's goals and aspirations as Superman. She originally thought it was a calling for him, a way to use his powers without being Clark Kent. But when the flooding starts and John Kent asks Clark if they will be alright, Lana understands the burden and pressure that Clark is putting on himself. While this may be his calling in life, it is not any easier or less stressful just because he is Superman. Underneath the costume, he has anxieties and worries, and feels compelled to help everyone he can, but also internalizes the guilt of when he cannot help or is unsuccessful, like with Jenny Vaughn. Lana only views him as Superman until Martha corrects her to call him Clark. Martha strips the metaphorical costume, buries all of the mighty slogans, and shows that Superman is still a human with emotions like the rest of them. His actions and abilities may be super, but he is still a man. Lana gives him a great speech before he flies off to help Smallville, letting him know that being who he wants to be is still hard, no matter how strong he is, but he will do it and succeed because he is noble and caring. In her time away from Smallville, Lana heard stories of what Superman was doing, and people would wonder why he would be selflessly doing all of these good things. Our previous narrators, Lois and Lex, wondered the same thing and found it hard to believe. Lana is not like them. Lana knows the man behind Superman, and that is the essence of what it is to do good. Clark has these powers and knows that he must use them to do good, but where does that leave the rest of humanity? According to Lana, it puts us at the same level as Superman. She gives examples of everyday people doing small acts that create huge impacts, from a nurse treating a patient, to a parent comforting their child, and to quote her, "These are choices each of us makes, not only to do good, but to inspire good in others." Lana captures the true essence and theme of Superman. We must strive to do what is best, and to do it as best as we can. It doesn't have to be on a global level like Superman does, but even within our communities and families, we can make a difference and teach and inspire others to pass along that kindness to create a better tomorrow. While I've touched on it briefly through each narrator, I think this may be Jeff Loeb's best writing work in a graphic novel. The focus on Superman's community and helping people through the good in his heart is able to be conveyed in a convincing way, even without any of the mention of Krypton or Superman's real parents, Jor-El and Lara. Bringing Superman down to the human level is such an amazing approach because of the typical criticism that Superman gets as a superhero. The common complaints are that he's boring and overpowered, and that any problem shouldn't be an issue for him because of the multitudes of superpowers that he has. But Jeff Loeb is able to peel back all of those layers, so we can understand both the internal and external pressures that Superman feels to be a hero. We all wonder what we would do with such a gift. Super strength, heat vision, the ability to fly. What would anyone do with all of these powers? With the discovery of these gifts, Clark doesn't ever think to use them for his own benefit. He understands the impact and importance of what he has and takes on the responsibility of what he is given. It offers a great perspective of how we approach each opportunity we are given in our lives. Do we squander it? Do we exploit it? Or do we accept the responsibility of what has been given to us? Superman for All Seasons shows how and why we should be heroes within our own capabilities, and that we shouldn't take kindness for granted, that it should be paid forward for the betterment of us all. I read Superman for All Seasons back in November of 2024. This was during the time of the 2024 election happening in the United States, a contentious election to say the least. It became difficult to bear at times, all the vitriol and disagreements happening during this time period, and the attention that it would get in the media and online. After experiencing months of negativity, I was surprised and happy to read this comic book and to have some moments of inspiration and hope. While I don't think it's all of our fault, it seems so easy to get sucked into negativity, to lash out in an argument, and to live in a bubble and only interact with people virtually. In a way, we've lost our sense of humanity, like Lex Luthor. He's in his tower, in his bubble, looking down at the citizens of Metropolis considering himself the superior person. How many times have we felt this way online? This person's an idiot. They have no idea what they're talking about. What I think is correct. Everything else is wrong. Meanwhile, Superman is getting to know people, looking at problems that need to be solved, approaching strangers and wondering, how can I help you? Approaching your enemies and asking them for help. Superman doesn't see the labels that are placed or that we place on one another. He only sees the person that needs help, the people that need support, or those who just need a friend, and to reject outright acts of evil. So why is it so hard for us to do that? Why do the negative voices sound so much clearer to us than the positive ones? It's a question that is explored throughout the entirety of Superman for All Seasons, and the answer is simple. It is harder to do the right thing all the time than to just take the easy road. How easy will life be for Clark just to use his powers as he wants to, kill anyone who disagrees with what he does, and force his will on humanity? How easy would it be for any of us to just rob a store, steal our neighbor's property, to hurt or kill others just because we could? Is it the fear of being punished that stops us? Or do we not do these things because we know it is inherently wrong? Would we do these evil things if we know we could get away with it? Superman could. Who would stop Superman from doing anything he wanted to with his powers? And that's what makes him such a model to aspire to. Because he doesn't. He knows what is right and what is wrong, and uses his powers to enforce what is good in the world. And he wants us to do the same. To uplift our fellow neighbors, help those in need, and to outright reject evil. Clark may be from Krypton, but he grew up on Earth just like the rest of us. If human values can be instilled in a Superman to do what is right at all times, then what is stopping you? How can you inspire others to do good in your lives?